The Great Hall of Velar Prime was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds formed inside on humid days. The walls were made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Thousands of seats filled the chamber, arranged in circles that rose up like a mountain. At the very top sat the oldest species. At the very bottom, closest to the floor, sat humanity. Ambassador Li Yunei had climbed those stairs for 15 years. Every day she walked past the delegates who looked at her like she was an insect. Every day she smiled and bowed and spoke in the soft voice that aliens expected from humans. Every day she swallowed her pride and told herself that patience would bring change. Today, she was done with patience. She sat in the human section with only 4 other delegates. Admiral Park Jin sat beside her, his gray uniform pressed and perfect. He was 60 years old, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen 3 wars. He did not speak much. He did not need to. High Speaker Orvith stood at the center of the chamber. He was a Velith, tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and 4 arms that moved like dancing snakes. The Velith were the oldest species in the council. They had traveled between stars when humans still lived in caves. They never let anyone forget this. "We will now discuss the matter of territorial redistribution," Orvith said. His voice was smooth and cold, like ice sliding over glass. The human colonies in the outer reach have failed to meet productivity standards. The council proposes transferring 3 worlds to Velith management, Auna stood. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face showed nothing. "High Speaker, I must object. Earth has invested 2 centuries of resources in those colonies. Our people built cities there. They raised children there. You cannot simply take them." Laughter rippled through the chamber. It was soft, polite laughter, but it cut like a knife. Orveth raised one of his 4 hands. The laughter stopped. He looked down at Una from his platform, and his expression was the same one a person might give to a barking dog. "Ambassador Li," he said, "the council does not require your permission. Humanity joined this assembly as observers, not as equals. Your species is young. Your judgment is limited. We know what is best." He waved his hand, and Una's microphone went silent. She was still speaking, but no sound came out. Around her, the other delegates returned to their conversations, as if she had never existed. Una stood there for a long moment. Her hands trembled at her sides, not from fear, from rage. Admiral Park Jin watched her face. He had known Una for 20 years. He had seen her negotiate with pirates, calm riots, and stare down generals. He had never seen her look like this. She sat down slowly. Her movements were very controlled, like a person holding a bomb. "Admiral," she said quietly, "do you remember what you told me when I first took this position?" Jin nodded. "I told you that diplomacy is the art of making your enemy think they have one until the moment you cut their throat." "Yes." Una folded her hands in her lap. "I think it is time to stop pretending." That evening, they met in a small room deep inside the human embassy. The room had no windows and no electronic devices. It was built for secrets. Una stood before a simple communication device. It looked old and ugly compared to alien technology, but it was completely secure. No one in the galaxy could crack human encryption. The aliens had never considered that the primitive species might have secrets worth keeping. "Are you certain?" Jin asked. "Once we do this, there is no going back." Una thought about her grandmother, who had told her stories about Earth's first contact with aliens. Humans had been so excited. They had believed they were joining a community of wise and peaceful beings. Instead, they found a galaxy full of bullies who saw Earth as a resource to exploit. She thought about her father, who had worked in alien factories for 40 years. He had died with bent shoulders and broken dreams, still hoping that someday, somehow, humanity would be treated fairly. She thought about the children being born on those colony worlds. Children who would grow up knowing that their homes could be taken at any moment, by beings who saw them as less than animals. "I am certain," she said. She typed a single message. "Protocol silence. Effective immediately." The message traveled across the galaxy at faster than light speed. It reached every human ship, Every human colony, every human embassy. It was a message that humanity had prepared for 50 years, hoping they would never need to use it. The next morning, the Galactic Council gathered for its daily session. The human seats were empty. High Speaker Orvith noticed immediately. He felt a small flash of irritation. Where are the human delegates? No one knew. Messages were sent to the human embassy. There was no response. A security team was dispatched. They found the embassy empty. Every human was gone. Perhaps they have accepted their place, said one delegate, as the chamber filled with laughter. But Orvith did not laugh. He was very old enough to remember things that younger species had forgotten. He remembered stories about a species that had nearly destroyed itself in nuclear fire. A species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed millions. A species that smiled and bowed and spoke softly, but carried something dark and patient in their eyes. He looked at the empty seats, and for the first time in centuries, he felt something strange in his chest. It felt like fear. Across the galaxy, humans stopped working. They left their jobs at alien factories. They walked off alien ships. They closed their shops and restaurants and trading posts. They moved quietly, without anger, without explanation. The galaxy had grown used to humans being everywhere, doing everything. Humans were cheap labor. Humans were reliable workers. Humans asked for nothing and accepted everything. Now, suddenly they were gone, and in the silence they left behind. The galaxy began to understand something terrible. They had never controlled humanity. They had only borrowed humanity's patience. That loan had just come due. General Conte stood in a room that did not exist. The maps called this place the Sol Megaplex, level 47. But level 47 was supposed to be a water treatment facility. No one, except a handful of people, knew that beneath the pipes and filters, there was a command center that could survive a direct nuclear strike. Kong was 70 years old. His hair was white, his back was straight, and his mind was sharper than men half his age. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at glowing screens. Information flowed from every corner of the galaxy. Ship positions, resource stockpiles, enemy fleet movements. Everything humanity needed to fight a war that the galaxy did not know was coming. Status report, Kong said. A young officer named Song Min answered. Protocol silence is at 94% completion, sir. All human workers have evacuated from alien space. Our merchant fleet has returned to protected zones. Shadow Fleet is moving into position. Shadow Fleet. The words made Kang smile, though his face barely moved. For 50 years, Earth had been building ships in secret. They hid them in asteroid fields, in dead solar systems, in places where no alien had ever bothered to look. The galaxy thought humanity had a small defense force of maybe 200 ships. The real number was closer to 4,000. And Project Prometheus? Kang asked. Dr. Chohana reports full readiness. Kang nodded. Project Prometheus was humanity's greatest secret. Weapons that the Galactic Council had banned, calling them too dangerous for civilized species. Singularity bombs that could crush a planet into a point smaller than an atom. Phase shift armor that let ships exist in two places at once. Combat AI that could think faster than any living brain. The aliens had forbidden these technologies. Humanity had smiled and agreed, then built them anyway. In another part of the Megaplex, Trade Minister Bei Wu was having a very different kind of meeting. His visitors were not soldiers. They were economists, logistics experts, and data analysts. They were the quiet heroes of humanity's plan. Show me the numbers, Bei said. A young woman named Oh Su pulled up a holographic display. Lines and graphs filled the air, showing the flow of goods across the galaxy. It is exactly as we planned, Su said. Human workers control 40% of the galaxy's shipping infrastructure. We handle 35% of all maintenance on alien stations. We process 60% of food distribution for the outer colonies. Bei nodded slowly. This was the weapon that no one saw coming. Humanity had been so eager to work, so willing to take the jobs that other species considered beneath them. The galaxy thought they were exploiting cheap human labor. They never realized they were becoming dependent on it. How long until the effects become critical? Bay asked. The Oryx Collective will face food shortages within 3 weeks. The Telvar Banking Guild will lose access to their own financial systems within a month. The Nithani military cannot repair their ships without human technicians. Bay smiled. It was a small, cold smile. Let them learn what we are worth. On the Koran homeworld, far from Earth, a military analyst named Vethtal was learning that lesson very quickly. Vethtal was not important. He was a junior researcher, assigned to study alien species that no one cared about. His superiors gave him the human file as a joke. Humans were weak, everyone knew that. What was there to study? But Vethtal was curious. He began reading human history, and what he found made his blood run cold. These creatures had fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They had built weapons that could destroy cities in a single flash of light. They had burned their own world, poisoned their own air, driven their own species to the edge of extinction, and somehow, they had survived. He read about a war called World War II, 60 million dead in 6 years. He read about something called the Cold War, where humanity had pointed enough nuclear weapons at itself to end all life on their planet. And they had lived like that for decades. He read about their heroes, soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their friends, pilots who crashed their planes into enemy ships, ordinary people who walked into fire to rescue strangers. These were not the actions of a weak species. These were the actions of creatures who had looked into the void and decided that death was acceptable, as long as they took their enemies with them. Vethtal wrote a report. He sent it to his superiors with a single warning: do not provoke the humans. They are not prey. They are predators who have been pretending to be prey. His superiors laughed at him. They called him paranoid. They told him to stop wasting time on primitive species. That night, Vethtal went home to his family. He told his wife to pack their belongings. He told his children to say goodbye to their friends. Where are we going? His wife asked. Away, Vethtal said. As far from human space as we can get. Back on Earth, General Kang received a message from Ambassador Li Yuna. The Velith had sent envoys to negotiate. They were offering to restore the human colonies if humanity would return to work. What should we tell them? An aide asked. Tong read the message twice. Then he deleted it. Tell them nothing, he said. They will learn to listen when we have nothing to say. The aide hesitated. Sir, they might attack. Kong turned to face his staff. His eyes were calm and steady, like a man who had already seen the end of the story. Let them come, he said. We have been slaves for 200 years. We have smiled while they insulted us. We have worked while they mocked us. We have waited while they stole from us. He pointed at the screens, where thousands of red dots showed the position of humanity's hidden fleet. Now it is their turn to wait. And when they understand what they have done, when they finally feel the fear that we have felt for 2 centuries, then we will talk. He turned back to the window. Outside, the lights of Sol stretched to the horizon. 20 billion humans lived on Earth. Another 30 billion lived in the colonies. 50 billion souls, all waiting for the word. Till then, Kong said softly, let them learn what silence sounds like. The galaxy was about to learn. Captain Yunde stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched death approach. 200. Nithani warships filled his screen, their hulls painted the color of dried blood. The Nithani were the greatest military power in the galaxy. Their ships were fast, their weapons were powerful, and their soldiers had never known defeat. Yoon had 12 ships. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Shin Yoon, stood beside him. She was young, only 32 years old, but her mind worked faster than anyone Yoon had ever met. She could look at a battlefield and see patterns that others missed. They are arranging themselves in a standard hunting formation, Yoon said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. They expect us to run, and if we don't run, then they expect us to die quickly. She smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They are wrong about both. The communication screen flickered. A Nathani face appeared, gray-skinned and sharp-featured, with eyes like black glass. This was Fleet Admiral Nethris, commander of the Expeditionary Force. "Human vessels," Nethris said, "you are in violation of Galactic Council directives. Your government has abandoned the Assembly. Your workers have abandoned their posts. This is unacceptable." Yoon said nothing. "You will surrender your ships and return to your assigned duties," Nethris continued. "If you refuse, we will destroy you. You have 1 hour to comply." Yoon looked at Yoon. She nodded slightly. He turned back to the screen. When he spoke, his voice carried across the void to every ship in both fleets. "Admiral Nethris, I am Captain Yoon, Day of the Earth vessel, Indomitable. I have a message for you and for every species in this galaxy." He paused. Around him, his crew stood straighter. They knew what was coming. 200 years ago, my ancestors looked up at the stars and dreamed of meeting other civilizations. They imagined friendship. They imagined cooperation. They imagined a galaxy united in peace. Yoon's eyes hardened. "Instead, we found you. We found species who treated us like animals. We found masters who worked us to death and laughed at our pain. We found a galaxy that took everything we offered and gave nothing in return." The bridge was silent. Every human in the fleet was listening. "You think we are weak because we smiled? You think we are stupid because we obeyed? You think you can take our homes, insult our people, and face no consequences?" Yoon leaned forward. "We taught ourselves to split atoms before we left our cradle. We walked on our moon before your ancestors stopped fighting with sticks. You taught us nothing. We learned nothing from you except patience." His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the void. "That patience is over. Come and learn what we have become." He cut the transmission. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Nathani fleet began to move. "All ships," Yoon said, "execute Pattern 9. Pattern 9 was not in any alien database. No alien had ever seen it. It was the result of 50 years of secret research, war games played in hidden bunkers, strategies designed by minds that had studied every conflict in human history. The 12 human ships, scattered like seeds in wind." Then Nathani laughed. "Running would not save them. But the humans were not running. Lieutenant." Commander Shin Yoon watched her screen with absolute focus. She saw the Nathani ships as shapes in her mind, moving in predictable paths. They were arrogant. They followed their training without thinking. "First group, fire on my mark," she said. "Target their lead destroyer." Mark. 4 human ships appeared from behind an asteroid, firing as one. Their weapons were not like alien weapons. They did not shoot energy beams or plasma bolts. They shot something worse. The singularity bombs hit the Nathani destroyer. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the ship collapsed into itself, crushed by gravity that should not exist. It became a point of light, then nothing at all. The Nathani formation broke. They had never seen such a weapon. They had been told humans had primitive technology. They had been told this would be easy. They had been lied to for 11 hours. The battle raged across the Crimson Drift. The human ships danced through the Nathani formation, appearing and disappearing, striking and vanishing. Phase shift technology let them exist in 2 places at once, firing from positions that made no sense that Nathani could not adapt. Their tactics were designed for enemies who fought fairly, who stayed in formation, who followed the rules of war. Humans had no rules. Humans had only the desperate creativity of a species that had been fighting for survival since the first human picked up a stone. Yoon watched his ships. The Brave went first, rammed by a Nathani cruiser. Then the Defiant, caught between 2 battleships. Then the Morning Star, sacrificing itself to save the Indomitable. But for every human ship that fell, a dozen Nathani vessels became wreckage. In the final hour, Fleet Admiral Nethris sat alone on his bridge. His flagship was burning. His fleet was scattered. Of 200 ships, only 53 remained. He had been a soldier for 60 years. He had won battles that lesser beings could not imagine. He had never known defeat. Now he watched a single human ship approach through the debris. The Indomitable had taken damage, but it was still fighting. It was always fighting. Nethris opened a channel to his homeworld. His voice was weak, his body broken, but his words were clear. This is Fleet Admiral Nethris. I am sending this message as my final report. Do not send more ships to fight the humans. Send diplomats. Send priests. Send anyone who knows how to beg for mercy. He coughed, and silver blood floated in the zero gravity. We were wrong about them. Everyone was wrong. They are not primitives. They are not prey. They are what we forgot existed. They are predators who learned to wear the mask of peace. His eyes closed. They're not what we thought. They are not what we thought at all. The transmission ended. Captain Yunde stood among the wreckage of the greatest military power in the galaxy. His ship was damaged. His crew was exhausted. He had lost 4 vessels and over 1,000 lives, but he had won. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that had never cared about humans suddenly found themselves very interested. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. But there was no human delegate to address. On Earth, the people celebrated. But General Kang Tae did not celebrate. He stood in his command center, looking at the casualty reports. He made a promise. Every name on that list would be remembered. Every life lost would be honored. And the galaxy that had forced humanity to fight would never, ever forget the price of arrogance. The first battle was over. The war had just begun. 6 months after the Battle of Crimson Drift, the galaxy was falling apart. Commander Imnari watched it happen from the shadows. She was an intelligence operative, trained to disappear into alien crowds and listen to secrets. For 3 years, she had lived on the Telvar station Nexus Prime, pretending to be a cleaning worker. No one looked twice at a human with a mop. Now she stood in a maintenance corridor. Watching the chaos through a dirty window, the great trading hall of Nexus Prime had once been the richest place in the galaxy. Merchants from 100 species had gathered here to make deals worth more than some planets. The floors had been polished crystal. The walls had displayed art worth billions. Today, the crystal was cracked. The art had been sold. The merchants were gone, and in their place were refugees. Huddled together in groups, waiting for food that might never come. The Telvari Banking Guild had collapsed 3 weeks ago. Without human workers to maintain their systems, their financial networks had failed. Trillions of credits had vanished overnight. Species that had been wealthy for centuries suddenly had nothing. Nari felt nothing. She had spent 3 years listening to Telvari bankers laugh about human poverty. She had heard them joke about how humans would work for almost nothing because they were too stupid to demand more. Now those same bankers were begging for scraps. She activated her hidden communicator. Station Nexus Prime is at critical failure, she reported. Food supplies will run out in 2 weeks. Security forces are losing control. The refugees are starting to riot. General Kang Tae's voice came through, calm as always. Understood. Continue observation. Do not intervene. Sir, there are children here. They are starving. There was a pause. When Kong spoke again, his voice was softer. I know, Commander. But we cannot save them without revealing ourselves. The mission continues. Nari closed her eyes. She understood the logic. She hated it, but she understood. This was the price of arrogance, not hers, not humanity's. The price that the galaxy had to pay for 2 centuries of cruelty. On the Velith homeworld, High Speaker Orvith faced a different kind of crisis. His council chamber was full of angry voices. Representatives from a dozen species shouted at each other, blaming everyone except themselves. The Orcs blamed the Velith for starting the conflict. The Nithani demanded revenge for their defeated fleet. The Telvari demanded someone fix their economy. Orvith sat in his chair and said nothing. He was very old, older than anyone in the room, and he remembered things that others had forgotten. He remembered when the Velith had been young. He remembered when his people had struggled and fought and nearly destroyed themselves. He remembered the arrogance that came after, the belief that survival meant superiority. He had made a terrible mistake. He had looked at humanity and seen only what he wanted to see. He had seen a young species, eager to please, willing to work. He had not seen the fire in their eyes, the patience in their hearts, the memory of wars that made his people's conflicts look like children's games. Now that fire was burning, and he did not know how to stop it. A young Velith named Myra Saul approached his chair. She was a reformer, one of the few who had always argued for better treatment of humans. Orvith had ignored her warnings. He wished now that he had listened. "Hi, Speaker," she said quietly. "I have made contact with Ambassador Lee Yuna." The room fell silent. "She has agreed to speak with us," Myra Saul continued, "but she will not come here. She will broadcast her message to the entire galaxy. She says that everyone needs to hear what humanity wants." Orvith closed his eyes. "And what does humanity want?" I asked her that question. She said I would find out with everyone else. 1 hour later, every screen in the galaxy showed the same image. Ambassador Lee Yuna sat in a simple room, wearing the traditional clothes of her homeland. Her hair was gray now. Her face was lined with age and worry, but her eyes were steady, and her voice was strong. "My name is Lee Yuna. I speak for Earth and all human colonies. I speak for the 50 billion souls who have waited 200 years for this moment." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "You are wondering what we want? You are afraid that we want revenge. You are afraid that we will do to you what you did to us." Her expression softened, just slightly. "We are not you. Did not leave the Galactic Council to start a war. We left because you gave us no choice. We left because our words meant nothing. Our votes counted for nothing. Our lives were worth nothing. We wanted to be partners. You made us servants. We wanted respect. You gave us contempt. We wanted a place at the table. You pushed us to the floor and laughed." Yuna leaned forward. "You have learned what we are worth. Your ships are burning. Your economies are collapsing. Your people are hungry and afraid. And you, finally, want to listen. So listen carefully. Do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want your planets or your wealth. We do not want revenge even though we have earned it. We are not monsters. We never were. What we want is simple. We want equality. True equality, not the fake kind where you smile at us while stealing our homes. We want a new council where no species sits above another. We want trade that is fair. We want our children to grow up knowing that they will be judged by their actions, not their species." Her voice hardened. "We want you to remember what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. We want you to remember that the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who smile and bow and work without complaint, they are not your slaves. They are not your tools. They are beings with dignity, with pride, with the same right to exist as any creature in this universe." She stood. "The old council is dead. We will build something new, something better. You can join us, or you can watch from the outside while history moves forward without you. The choice is yours. But remember this, we left the table once. We can leave again. And next time, we might not come back." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings sat in stunned silence. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some, a small number, felt something unexpected. They felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, the humans were right. Maybe the old way had been wrong. Maybe it was time for something new. On Nexus Prime, Commander Imnari watched the broadcast on a broken screen. Around her, alien refugees were crying. Some cried from fear. Some cried from shame. A small Oryx child tugged at her sleeve. The child did not know that Nari was human. She was just another stranger in a crowd of strangers. "Are the humans going to hurt us?" the child asked. Nari looked down at the small, frightened face. She thought about everything her people had suffered. She thought about revenge, about justice, about the cold satisfaction of watching her enemies fall. Then she knelt down and smiled. She said softly, "The humans are going to help. That is what we do." The child did not understand. But someday she would. Someday the whole galaxy would understand. 1 year after humanity left the table, they returned. The new assembly hall was built on neutral ground, a moon that belonged to no one. It was smaller than the old chamber on Villar Prime, and it was built differently. The seats were arranged in a circle, all at the same level. No species sat higher than another. No species looked down on anyone. Ambassador Lee Yuna stood at the entrance, wearing the same simple clothes she had worn in her broadcast. Behind her, Admiral Park Jin waited in his formal uniform, his medals gleaming in the artificial light. "Are you ready?" Jin asked. Yuna smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "I have been ready for 15 years. They walked into the chamber together. The seats were nearly full. Representatives from 100 species had come to witness this moment. Some came with hope. Some came with fear. Some came because they had no other choice. High Speaker Orvith was there, but he no longer sat in the highest seat. He sat among his own delegation, just another representative, just another voice. The Velith had fought against the new system until the very end, but when humanity's full fleet emerged from hiding, over 3,000 warships appearing from nowhere, they had surrendered without firing a shot. Orvith watched Yuna approach. His 4 hands were folded in his lap, and his silver face showed nothing. But his eyes followed her every step. Yuna stopped in the center of the circle. She looked around at the faces of beings who had once mocked her, insulted her, treated her like an animal. She could have hated them. Part of her still did, but hate was a poison, and she had drunk enough poison for 1 lifetime. "We are gathered here to begin something new," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. The old Galactic Council was built on a lie. The lie that some species are better than others. The lie that age gives wisdom, that power gives right, that the strong can take from the weak without consequence. She paused. That lie nearly destroyed us all. It corrupted your civilizations and crushed ours. It made enemies of people who should have been friends. It wasted centuries that could have been spent building something beautiful. Yuna held up a small device. A holographic document appeared in the air above her, written in 100 languages. "This is the new compact. It is not perfect. It cannot fix every wrong or heal every wound. But it is a beginning." She read the key points aloud. "Equal representation for all species. Fair trade agreements. Shared defense against common threats. Justice systems that applied to everyone, regardless of power or influence." "There is one more thing," Yuna said. "A requirement that applies to everyone, including humanity." The chamber was very quiet, you must remember. Every species must teach its children what happened here. Not to create shame, but to create understanding. We must remember that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice. And justice requires that we see each other clearly, as equals, as partners, as fellow travelers in a universe that cares nothing for any of us. She lowered the device. "Will you sign?" One by one, the representatives came forward. Some signed quickly, eager to move past their shame. Some signed slowly, still struggling to accept that the old order was truly dead. But they all signed, even Orvith signed. His hand trembled as he touched the document, but his name appeared alongside the others. A small thing, perhaps. But it meant something. When the ceremony was over, Yuna walked to the seat marked with Earth's symbol. It was a simple chair, no different from any other in the chamber. For 15 years, she had dreamed of sitting in a chair like this. A chair that belonged to her. A chair that no one could take away. She sat down. No one told her to stand. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for weeks. In Seoul, millions filled the streets, waving flags and singing songs. In New Shanghai, fireworks painted the sky with colors that had never existed in nature. In the floating cities of Europa, people danced on the ice until their feet bled. But General Kang Tay did not celebrate. He stood before the United Earth's Parliament, wearing his old uniform, his medals heavy on his chest. He was older now, and tired. The weight of command had taken years from his life. "We have one," he said. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. But victory is not the same as triumph. Victory is just the end of fighting. What comes after, that is what matters. He looked at the faces of the men and women who led humanity. Politicians, generals, scientists, artists, all of them waiting for his words. "I want to tell you a story," Kong said. "When I was young, my grandmother told me about our first contact with aliens. She said that humanity went into space hoping to find friends. Instead, we found masters." His eyes were distant, remembering. "For 200 years, we were slaves. Not officially, of course. They called it partnership. They called it trade. But we all knew the truth. We were servants, and they were masters, and no amount of polite words could change that." He straightened his shoulders. "We are free. Now we are equals. But freedom is not a gift, and equality is not a prize. They are responsibilities. They are burdens. They are the weight of knowing that the galaxy is watching, waiting to see what we do next." Kong's voice hardened. "Some of you want revenge. I understand. I wanted it too. I wanted to watch their worlds burn the way they watched us suffer. I wanted them to feel what we felt." He shook his head slowly. "But that is not who we are. That is not who we choose to be. We did not fight for the right to become monsters. We fought for the right to be ourselves. And ourselves, at our best, are better than that." He raised his hand, and the chamber fell completely silent. "Let this be our doctrine now and forever. We did not want war. We did not seek dominion. But we will never again bow to those who mistake kindness for weakness. Let the galaxy remember we left the table once. Pray we never have to leave again." The Parliament rose to its feet. The applause was loud, but underneath it was something deeper. Pride, relief, and a quiet voice that asked whether they truly had changed, or whether they had simply become what they once feared. Only time would answer that question. In the new assembly hall, Ambassador Leuna sat in her chair and watched the stars through the transparent ceiling. Jin stood beside her, silent as always. "Do you think it will last?" Yuna asked. Jin considered the question. "Nothing lasts forever. But we have given them a chance. That is more than they gave us." Una nodded. Her eyes were tired, but there was peace in them. A peace she had not felt in 15 years. "My grandmother used to tell me that humans are like water," she said. "We flow around obstacles. We fill every space we are given. We are soft and gentle, but over time, we can wear down mountains." She smiled. "The galaxy tried to contain us. They built walls and dug channels and thought they could control where we went. They did not understand. You cannot contain water. You can only redirect it." She looked at Jin. "We have been redirected long enough. Now we flow where we choose, and the galaxy will never be the same." Outside the window, humanity's fleet hung in space. 3,000 ships, built in secret, crewed by men and women who had given everything for this moment. They were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were gardeners, planting seeds in soil that had been barren for too long. The harvest would come. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. And when it came, the galaxy would finally understand what humanity had always known. The table was not for sitting above others. The table was for sharing, and humanity had saved them all a seat.